Try to imagine these places without the ferns, and you'll see why ferns are one of the great underrated wonders of nature. Join me on a journey through the Pacific Northwest's stunning forest as we identify 6 common ferns. By the end of this video, I'll also reveal my favorite fern-filled hikes in Oregon, Washington, and Northern California, so you can experience these fabulous places yourself. We're joined today by our little explorer who is also just learning about ferns. If you enjoy this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more adventures in the Pacific Northwest. So let's get started. I'll start with the fern our little explorer is investigating here, the licorice fern. These ferns are generally found growing in carpets of moss, often in trees. Big leaf maples like the ones shown here seem to be particularly fabulous hosts for moss and licorice ferns. They only grow in the wet season, so you won't find licorice ferns in summer. Another great licorice fern host is the giant spruce trees on the coast. They also grow well on boulders and cliffs. Notice that licorice ferns have individual stems sticking out of the moss. That helps distinguish them from our next fern, the Maidenhair Fern. Maidenhair ferns are also small as ferns go, but they have a distinct pattern of leaves that grow out of a central stem. You'll often find them in the misty amphitheaters of waterfalls. Maidenhair ferns are also deciduous, but unlike the licorice fern, they die back in winter instead of summer. The right-hand side of this canyon is dominated by maidenhair ferns. Number 3, the sword fern, is perhaps the most familiar of the Pacific Northwest ferns. You'll find it dominating the understory, its dark evergreen leaves breathing life into winter forests and summer forests alike. Sword ferns are easily recognizable by their huge size, dark evergreen fronds that grow in clumps, and leaves with distinct lobes where they attach to the stems. Here you can see sword ferns and licorice ferns together. Number 4, the deer fern, is somewhat reminiscent of the sword fern and also evergreen, but it is much smaller. And the leaves don't have a lobe. Here's my favorite shot of deer ferns. To give you an idea for scale, here you can see deer ferns at lower right and sword ferns dominating the rest of the frame. You can see the deer ferns are much smaller. Number 5, the bracken fern, and number 6, the lady fern, look somewhat similar. Both are large, pale green, deciduous, and with complex leaf patterns. A key difference is that bracken ferns have a central stem that grows from the ground, while lady ferns have fronds that grow straight out of the ground in a clump. In this shot, you can see the pale green lady ferns in the foreground, with darker sword ferns behind them. Licorice ferns on the mossy tree, and maidenhair ferns in the background. Now for my Pacific Northwest hike recommendations for fern enthusiasts. Click the links at upper right or in the video description for our videos on these hikes. In Northern California, I recommend the James Irvine Trail to Fern Canyon. Before reaching Fern Canyon itself, it passes through a fern-filled forest of huge redwoods. In Oregon, I'd recommend the Gwin Creek hike on the coast. The Mackenzie River Trail. And the Trail of 10 Falls at Silver Falls State Park. In Washington, I'd recommend the Hoh River Trail in Olympic National Park. There are, of course, tons more fabulous places to see ferns in the Pacific Northwest. Subscribe to our channel for more tips on hikes and other travel adventures in the Northwest. See you next time.